Welcome, lords, ladies, and jesters, to the Rumble Hollow Breakdown. Today, I'll be explaining to you, dear viewer, everything there is to know about discs. Unlike my crash courses, I will hopefully be skipping nothing, so as you can see in the chapters, this video will be divided into 5 parts. This, the intro, beginner, intermediate, and advanced, and useless trivia at the end. Feel free to skip past any parts you're confident you already know, or anything you aren't ready for, or anything you don't care about. If you came here from the Rumble crash course, you'll notice a change of scenery. I'm in the gym now, because if I'm not in the gym, I can't receive assistance from my bestest of friends, myself. Disc, like all summoning moves, is divided into 2 poses. First, what's called the base pose. Base pose is the starting position of all summoning moves. It's this pose right here. Both hands right under your health bar, shoulder width apart, palms up, knuckles forward. Doing base pose by itself does nothing. But you can check to make sure you're doing it right, like with any pose, by making sure your fingers close automatically. The second pose is disc. Your dominant hand, which for me is my right hand, will be extended forward, palm inward, knuckles forward, at about shoulder height. This hand of the pose is shared with ball and dash poses. Your non-dominant hand will be moved inward in front of your abdomen, staying close to your body, slightly off center, knuckles pointed in, palm toward yourself. Like base pose, doing disc by itself also does nothing. If you chain these 2 poses together fast enough, you get a disc. The term fast enough is used very loosely. The required speed is actually very low. In addition, despite what Sally would have you believe, you can remain in base pose for as long as you'd like before moving to a summon pose. What's that? Who's Sally? This is Sally. Sally is the friendly poltergeist that helps new rumblers learn the moves. She has a long and tragic past, so she doesn't talk much, but she's always willing to show you the motions, even if she's not perfectly accurate. This, by the way, is a mod called Pose Hitboxes by Marco Polo. As you can see, it shows you exactly where you need to put your hands to get the poses to work. While Sally can help a lot, it's important to practice without her help as well. You see, she's been cursed, so she can never leave the gym. So once you hop in a match, she can't help you, or if you enter a park. Eventually I'll make a video on all the structures as a group so people don't have to skip through these videos, but for now you'll just have to tough it out. Disc is the lightest and weakest of the 5 summonable structures, though there is a structure even weaker than a disc, and that structure is you, so don't let them hit you in the face. The disc has an innate toughness of 0, so if you want it to do any damage, it needs to be grounded or moving, or both. The disc is also extremely light, which means that forces that move other things a little bit move discs a lot. And, in part due to that lack of mass, they're very fragile. Even the barest touch will usually trigger an impact, though that impact might not end in the disc's demise. The disc is also extremely thin, meaning it can fit through very tight gaps. A good use for this is sending it under a struppered cube. The first thing you'll notice is that, like every other woman in your life, as soon as it discovers it's within a 10-yard radius of you, it will try and get away from you as fast as possible. This makes it ideal for long-range attacks, as just summoning the thing will send it all the way across the ring, and almost send it all the way across the pit. The second thing you'll notice is that it will shove you away from itself, much like your mother when she first saw your face. For now, you just need to remember to not do that on the edge of the ring, or right in front of a boulder. Now if you take a closer look, you'll see that the disc actually is summoned in 2 distinct phases. First, the disc raises straight up out of the ground, and then gets pushed forward, much like a straight. Though as you can see, it's actually a bit weaker than a straight, and the upwards motion is a little bit weaker than a kick. This will come up on the test. Disc has 3 main usages. The first is simple. 1 move, 1 damage. Very demure. Very mindful. Very cutesy. But just because your father left you as a child, I mean the disc leaves as soon as it's summoned, doesn't mean you can't smack it on the way out. With moderate speed, and that's a big ask for new players, you can chain a straight after a disc for faster disc. The key to doing this correctly, like with all combos, is to make it one fluid movement. You want your arm to move through all 3 poses as smoothly as possible. It's not 3 poses, it's a 1 combo. Instead of straight, you can chain a parry to get a low disc, which can circumvent guard stone, or go under hovering defenses, though the timing for a low disc is much more strict than for a speed disc. This is because for a low disc to work, it has to be triggered while the disc is still coming straight up before it gets that launch forward. That launch forward on summon is what pulls it out of the parry and makes it not do that. Whereas for the speed disc, you only have to modify it before it's too far away to hit. The second main use for discs is ranged explosions. I'll go more in depth on explosions in my explode video, shocker, but here's the short of the long of the short of it. Explosions do knockback based on the base toughness of the thing that explodes. And for a disc, that's a big fat 0. And so a disc's explosion, even with volatile, does no knockback whatsoever. But it still ungrounds nearby structures. And due to its inherent fragility, it's almost guaranteed to break, whereas larger objects won't necessarily. You can add explode to a disc by just doing explode after disc. For a more nuanced approach, you can pretend that you're grabbing a gate and closing it, but one of the doors is ajar. So you start in base pose, grab the doors, and close them in this one nice motion. The third and last main use of disc is movement tech. Disc sends you backwards, a little bit faster than a dash, but not for as long. So, just like you did with your first girlfriend, you can leave it before it leaves you by jumping immediately after the disc. This lets you maintain all of that momentum by being airborne. This motion is a little bit awkward since you have to bring at least one hand up into disc and then back down for jump. Lastly, disc can be used to trigger surge and adamant. Now, a normal disc will only trigger these effects for half a second, which isn't very useful for adamant, since if you have the wherewithal to hit your opponent within half a second of being struck yourself, you probably can also just parry the attack. Surge, on the other hand, is especially catered toward discs, as +1 damage to a disc is 2 damage, which is double the initial amount. While regular chip playstyle can take advantage of this just fine, I'll also mention that if you do disc straight, you're almost guaranteed to trigger surge on the second hit for a total of 3 damage, or the equivalent of a cube. Once you have some consistency with the various poses, it's a good idea to start experimenting with your calibration. The game recommends you T-pose, and the game is built around the assumption that you do, but nothing stops you from calibrating in any pose you want. I'll cover the specifics in my player physics video, at least according to the current plan, but for now, just know that if you calibrate differently, the placement of your disc poses can change. I personally calibrate with my hands really close together and looking down so that all the poses are moved inwards and down a bit, so all of the moves can be done with minimal movement if I want. But a lot of people don't play like that, so experiment. In the beginner segment, I touched on disc knockback and its relation to disc jumps. But often, you don't need to move back a whole lot, just a little. So you can just disc, or more likely speed disc, to move back almost exactly the same distance as a dash, over about 2/3 of the time. This can be instrumental in avoiding large projectiles, or in getting KBP, which will also be covered in my player physics video. As an extension of that, when you straight a grounded object, you get a slight upward boost in compared to a non-grounded object. If you combine this with a disc, this is called a Mojo Dash, as it was discovered by Mojo Jack. Or maybe it was only popularized by him, I haven't done the research on that. This is in effect just a more powerful backstep, though it does leave you airborne for a short time. So you won't always be able to do a Mojo jump without flowstone. Speaking of, I mentioned disc jumps, and I also mentioned speed disc backsteps. So the observant of you probably noticed you could just jump after a speed disc for an even faster disc jump. It's amazing that with such powers of observation you weren't able to tell who asked. Grounded discs also have a lot of uses. Firstly, they're so fragile and thin that you can just walk over them, and they still do a damage. This is called a landmine. In addition, when you straight ground a disc, you'll see it generates a ton of particles, effectively making its own smoke screen. This can lead many newer players to not realize what's happening and not defend themselves. This can also take more experienced opponents by surprise if they're busy focusing on something else. Discs also make for extremely potent anti-air, as just being put into hit stop will halt most aerial players in their tracks. Even just hitting the object they're on can be enough to make them take damage, though that won't always be enough to stop more experienced players. The easiest combo, as shown, is disc uppercut, or disc struppercut for a lower angle. Here is disc strupper versus disc upper. Unfortunately, disc kick is just disc upper but worse, though disc hop can have its uses. And as a last little tidbit, you can kick a structure and send a disc under it. Here's a side view so you can see what's happening. This section will mostly consist of 3-hit combos, including a disc. If you lack the speed to do quick 3-hit combos, now's a great time to pause and go practice strupper kick until you have the requisite speed. Great, you're back, unlike your father who went to get milk when you were 5. Let's continue. First up, the no thanks I'm out, or more commonly known as the speed disc jump. Yes, I already mentioned this, deal with it. You can also do this with a mojo dash if you have flowstone, and if you do it right, you don't even need flowstone. Next up is the combustion disc, or an explosive speed disc. It's really simple. You do a speed disc that's explosive. If disc straight explode is too fast for you, you can do disc explode straight too. Back to anti-air, you can do a more aggressive anti-air angle with disc kick uppercut. Here's that in comparison to disc uppercut again. It is kinda difficult since your dominant hand needs to go up for disc, down for kick, and then up for uppercut. Or you can do disc uppercut kick. Here are the two for comparison. As you can see, there's not much of a difference, though it is a lot of work just to send a disc higher than your mom on the average weekend. If disc parry is just too slow for you, you can do disc parry straight for a speedy low disc. And lastly, let's cover a mostly new concept called in-betweeners. In-betweeners are poses you do in between base pose and a structure pose. I'm not an expert, but I'll try and demonstrate. Here's a basic example. You can go from base to straight to disc. As I demonstrated, this can deflect incoming objects before you do your disc. One I frequently use is a hold disc, so that if I miss the hold on accident, I still get a disc for KBP. Shiftstone Bonanza. Vigor. Discs do 1 damage, and it takes 5 to trigger Vigor. And Vigor, like all Shiftstone interactions, ignores other Shiftstone interactions when determining when to trigger, which means if you get a friend with a damage mitigation stone, like Guard or Adamant, you can spam discs at them for 0 damage, but they'll still count towards the 5 to get Vigor to trigger and heal you. Surge. A normal ungrounded disc triggers the surge effect for about half a second. Luckily for us, it's possible to spam discs just a tad faster than that for 2 damage discs twice per second for an average of 4 DPS. Or as previously mentioned, you can do disc straight for a guaranteed 3 damage. Adamant. Adamant triggers before taking damage, meaning it mitigates all self-damage by 1. This means you can hit yourself with a disc via landmine or disc flick for free adamant, no damage necessary. Guard. With Guard or Adamant, it's possible to stop your momentum mid-air by hitting yourself with a disc. Charge Stone. If you charge a disc, it goes very fast. If you charge Chamber, then you get what's called a Golden Bullet. As you can see, the Golden Bullet outpaces even a speed disc. The Golden Bullet is the fastest attack, short of recursive railguns or explode setups with discs. Hitting an object puts it into hit stop like any other structure. Unlike other structures though, you can dish out more than 2 discs per second. Looking at you, Tamrel. Except for maybe Ball. An argument could be made there. Most opponents won't be happy if you do this, but as you can see, it effectively makes it difficult for them to do their combos. As you can see, this clone strupper kicks a wall, but if I speed disc it at the end, they don't kick. Or if I speed disc it slightly earlier, they don't uppercut or kick. Or with perfect timing, I can interrupt the straight and the uppercut. Or if I want to be really annoying, I can interrupt basically any combo. Or if you have great timing, you can make it so your opponent's combo, or only part of it, hits your disc instead of the structure they were aiming for. This is called combo theft. Back to hit stop abuse. If you're not already aware, any given structure can only be under the effect of one hit stop at a time. If a structure contacts another one that's already in hit stop, it'll bounce off just like it hit a tree. With good timing, you can hit an object in hit stop to bounce the disc off, or to make the other object bounce off. This is called a dead wall due to its relation to dead stops, and as I've demonstrated, you can use the surge triggering combo to achieve this. A dead stop occurs when an object undergoes a second hit stop the frame after it undergoes another one. I'll cover the specifics in a different video, but the effect is that the object that gets dead stopped will instantly lose all momentum it had before the dead stop. This is most easily done with discs, because discs move the fastest of any structure, excluding recursive railguns and massive explode setups and that kind of thing. So with physics-perfect timing, you can do this with discs too. Speaking of dead stop, let's talk about railguns. Railguns are another bug related to dead stop. To trigger a railgun, you need one structure to break through two structures on the same frame. This results in a massive increase in velocity, a doubling to be exact, assuming it hit two objects. Tripled velocity for 3, quadrupled with 4, etc, etc. Again, physics frame perfect. You can double an object's speed. All you have to do is smack another object as it breaks through another one, or even ricochets off another one, at exactly the same time. Until very recently, I'd only done this once, and I did it by accident to myself.
No, I'm not modifying that while you're pushing me into it.
Of course, he had a very articulate response. Oh! Moving on, it's much easier to frost bend a disc than it is to water bend one, so let's start there. Frost bending, or remote water bending, is just water bending outside your direct field of influence. Despite a disc's inherent fragility, it's surprisingly easy to water bend at high speeds. I'll cover why that is in my water bending video. For the purpose of this one, all you need to know is that it's possible. An excellent example of how to do this and why you should is a move that I coined called Sun and Moon. Disc has a very special property that isn't actually special because every summoned structure has this property too. It moves up when it's summoned, but it's only in relation to this shared feature that it gains its use. The essence of Sun and Moon is to use that shared upwards force to push an incoming ball up and away while letting the ball's weight force the disc back down into your opponent's shins. As of yet, I've clipped this in combat twice, though I've gotten it to deflect the ball but not hit the opponent several more times. As for waterbending proper, I'm mostly just mentioning that it's possible here. I've personally never accomplished this in combat, so most of the clips I'll show you are donated by Dizzy Dreaming. I've got two types of clips here. Defensive waterbending, which is mostly just a flex to do with a disc. There's no reason you shouldn't be doing this with a more structurally sound object. And a move she named Tidal Pull, which I can do, which lets you pull objects from farther away with Charge Stone. As you can see, this is accomplished by first getting a glancing blow off the side of an object to initiate contact without the disc breaking, then maintaining contact and letting Flick pull the object closer along with the disc. This section will be devoted to meme tech, or things that aren't useful in combat, at least not yet, but are still fun to do in parks or interesting interactions. If you do disc stomp, uppercut stomp, then you get this circle here. This offers little to no benefit for a full 1.5 seconds of setup time, but as you can see, it's egg-shaped, and if you strupper a disc, it does little flips. I'm once again led to a topic I'm not going to explain fully, but suffice it to say that on client, you can fly on a disc. The setup I just used, and the one that is easiest, is to do disc ground, don't move from where it puts you, kick, dash, jump, hold, and just keep your arm out. The two faces of disc aren't actually identical. You can see one side has this circular indent right here with a bunch of scribbles, while the other side has this one main indent on the side that's straight. This means you can play heads or tails with your opponent by holding a disc, gently pressing one side down with your hand, and then throwing it in the air. I'm not even kidding, this was my first take. Let's try that again. There we go, much more sensible. Though throughout this video I've been saying disc, you can also say disc. Both are correct. That's all I have for you today, and all I can think to say about discs. If I forgot anything, please make sure to comment. If you like the video, like the video. And if you want to see more, please subscribe. And as always, keep rumbling.